Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Nicholas was in the backyard that Saturday afternoon, adjusting the grill he'd recently bought, when his phone buzzed in his pocket. An unknown number flashed on the screen, and something deep in his gut told him not to answer. But he did. On the other end of the line, a man's voice, hesitant and serious, spoke words that made Nicholas's hands shake. "You need to come here. It's about your wife. Write down this address." The voice gave him an address in a neighborhood Nicholas only vaguely recognized, on the other side of town, and hung up before he could ask a single question. Nicholas stood still for a few seconds, phone still in hand, trying to process what he'd just heard. He glanced through the kitchen window and saw Jennifer sitting on the living room couch, scrolling through her phone with that familiar, relaxed expression. She was wearing sweatpants and one of his old t-shirts, her hair tied up in a messy bun. The scene was so normal, so routine, that for a moment Nicholas considered ignoring the call. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone was trying to scam him or stir up trouble. But something in the man's voice, a mix of urgency and genuine discomfort, kept him from dismissing the warning so easily. Nicholas and Jennifer had been married for 6 years. They'd met at an engineering conference where she represented the marketing firm handling the public image for major construction companies. Nicholas was a civil engineer specializing in infrastructure projects, and he'd recently gone into business with Mark, a college friend who over the years had become his best friend. Mark was practically part of the family. He came over for dinner at least twice a week, had been Nicholas's groomsman at the wedding, and had even helped him pick out Jennifer's engagement ring. The three of them formed an inseparable trio, or at least that's what Nicholas believed. In recent months, Nicholas had noticed subtle changes in Jennifer. She seemed more distant, less interested in hearing about his day, more absorbed in her phone. When he asked about her work, her answers were vague and hurried. Jennifer had started traveling more often for conferences and client meetings, absences that sometimes lasted entire weekends. Nicholas trusted her completely, so he never questioned it. After all, her job had always been demanding, and he understood the pressures of an ambitious career. But now, holding the phone with that address stuck in his mind, all those little inconsistencies began forming a deeply troubling pattern. Nicholas went inside, grabbed his car keys, and told Jennifer he needed to run out quickly to handle something at the office. She barely looked up from her phone, just waved her hand and murmured a distracted, "Okay, see you." As he drove through the city streets, Nicholas felt his heart racing, pounding irregularly against his chest. His palms were sweaty on the steering wheel. He kept trying to convince himself he was overreacting, that maybe it was just a misunderstanding, but a part of him already knew something was terribly wrong. The address led him to a modern residential building in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. It wasn't a sketchy or rundown place, but one of those newer condos with 24-hour security and full amenities. Nicholas parked out front and sat there for a few minutes, staring at the building's facade. Who had called? Why did this place have anything to do with Jennifer? He got out of the car and walked up to the front desk, where a middle-aged man in a gray uniform waited with a grave expression. "You Nicholas?" the security guard asked, and Nicholas recognized the voice from the call. He nodded, unable to speak. The guard sighed and gestured for him to follow. "Look, I didn't want to get involved in this, but my brother went through something similar a few years back. If it were me, I'd want to know." They stepped into the elevator, and the guard pressed the button for the 8th floor. "Apartment 804. Your wife lives there. She's got a key and comes and goes freely. It's been over a year now. I figured you knew, but the other day, when you called the front desk asking about her package, I realized you had no idea this place even existed." Nicholas felt his stomach drop. Jennifer had an apartment? A place he'd never even heard of? The elevator stopped, and the doors opened onto a well-lit hallway with beige carpeting. The guard pointed toward a door at the far end. "Sorry it had to be me who told you this, but you deserve the truth." He walked Nicholas to door 804. I'll open it for you. It's technically a routine inspection, logged in the system. You didn't see anything wrong here. The guard unlocked the door and pushed it open slightly. I'll wait out here. If you need anything, just call me. Nicholas took a deep breath and stood there for a few seconds, the sound of his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Part of him wanted to turn around and leave, go home and pretend none of this was happening. But another part, the part that needed the truth, took a few steps inside the apartment and closed the door behind him. The apartment was surprisingly well decorated. Modern furniture, framed artwork on the walls, a kitchen outfitted with expensive appliances. This wasn't some cheap or makeshift hideout. It was a home. Nicholas walked slowly through the living room, taking in every detail. There were throw pillows on the couch he recognized from a store Jennifer had once said she'd just popped into to look around. A floor lamp she'd mentioned was out of their budget. A Persian rug she'd commented was too beautiful not to buy. All these things were here, in this secret place, purchased with money that was supposedly too tight for non-essential spending. He walked into the bedroom, and that's where Nicholas's world truly collapsed. On the dresser sat photo frames. Pictures of Jennifer smiling next to a man. Not just any man, Mark. His business partner. His best friend. There were photos of them on a beach, hugging under a golden sunset. Photos in an upscale restaurant, clinking wine glasses. Photos on a mountain trail, Mark kissing Jennifer's forehead. Nicholas picked up one of the frames with trembling hands, unable to process what he was seeing. That beach trip had been labeled a conference in Miami 4 months ago. The restaurant outing had been a meeting with an important client 2 months prior. The hike was from a corporate retreat last month. Nicholas opened the dresser drawers and found Mark's clothes. Shirts he recognized. The watch Nicholas had given him as a birthday gift the previous year, tucked into a velvet box. There was even a toothbrush in the bathroom next to Jennifer's. They didn't just meet here, they lived here, at least part of the time. This was their nest, the place where they'd built a parallel life while Nicholas worked, trusted, and planned a future that would never come to be. On the nightstand beside the bed, Nicholas found something that made his blood run cold. An envelope full of documents. He opened it and saw bank statements from an account he didn't know existed, under Jennifer's name. Regular deposits. Large amounts. There was also a lease agreement for the apartment, signed 15 months ago. More than a year. They'd been together for over a year, and Nicholas hadn't seen a single thing. Or maybe he had, but had chosen to ignore it, trusting blindly because the alternative was too unbearable to face. Nicholas took photos of everything, the photo frames, the documents, Mark's clothes, the bank statements. Each piece of evidence carefully recorded on his phone. Then he left the apartment, where the guard was still waiting. They exchanged a silent look of understanding, and Nicholas gave a small nod of thanks before heading to the elevator. He drove back home in an almost dissociative state. The drive passed in a blur. He didn't remember traffic lights, turns, or anything else. His mind was locked on those images, those photos, that monumental betrayal involving the two people he'd trusted most in the world. When he got home, Jennifer was still on the couch, now watching a TV show. She looked up when he walked in and smiled. "Took you a while. Everything okay at the office?" Nicholas didn't answer right away. He just watched her, trying to reconcile the image of this woman sitting in his living room with the woman smiling in Mark's arms in those photos. How could she do it? How could anyone live two such different lives, switch between two worlds so effortlessly? "Jennifer," he said, and something in his tone made her pause the show and turn fully toward him. "We need to talk. Now." She frowned, confused. "What's wrong? You look pale." Nicholas pulled his phone from his pocket and opened his photo gallery. He turned the screen toward her, showing the first image, Jennifer and Mark hugging on the beach. He watched her face shift, confusion turning to shock, then panic. "Nicholas, I can explain," she started, getting up from the couch, but he raised his hand, cutting her off. "Explain what, Jennifer? The apartment you've been keeping for over a year? The trips you've taken with Mark while telling me you were working? The photo frames of you two acting like a happy couple?" He scrolled through the pictures, one after another, each image another blow. "Or maybe you'd like to explain why his clothes are in the closet, why the watch I gave him is tucked away in the dresser, why you two have toothbrushes side by side in the bathroom?" Jennifer's face flushed red, tears beginning to fall. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice shaking. Nicholas let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Not what I think? Then tell me, Jennifer. Tell me exactly what it is. Because from where I'm standing, my wife and my best friend have been having an affair for over a year, keeping a secret apartment, traveling together, living an entire life at my expense and behind my back." Jennifer tried to move closer, but Nicholas stepped back. "Don't touch me." The words came out cold and sharp. She stopped, wrapping her arms around herself. "It was a mistake. It started without us even meaning to, and then, we couldn't stop. But I love you, Nicholas. I swear I do." He shook his head, disbelieving. "You love me? People who love don't do this. People who love don't lie every single day, don't steal money, don't betray their husband with his best friend. Do you even understand what this is? This is cruelty. This is a betrayal so deep I don't even have words for it." "Mark. Mark said he was going to tell you," Jennifer murmured, almost to herself. Nicholas felt a surge of even greater anger. "Mark was going to tell me? When? After another year? 2? Or were you two just planning to keep going forever, using me as the idiot who pays the bills while you live out your little fantasy?" He pulled up more photos, showing the bank statements. "And this account? Where's this money coming from, Jennifer?" She hesitated, and Nicholas saw the truth before she even spoke. "You embezzled money from the company." It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Jennifer closed her eyes, confirming it. Mark had access to the accounts as a partner. He started siphoning small amounts months before we rented the apartment. I let him transfer some into my account. I thought you'd never notice, that they were just small amounts." Nicholas cut her off with a shout. "Small amounts? Jennifer, this is tens of thousands of dollars. You stole from me. From the company I built. From the future I was trying to secure. First came the money, then you two set up this whole nest at my expense." The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer was crying openly now, but Nicholas felt no pity. He thought of all the dinners where Mark sat at their table, laughing, toasting, pretending to be his friend. He thought of all the nights Jennifer kissed him goodnight, slept beside him, woke up and pretended everything was fine. The duplicity was so deep, so complete, that he couldn't wrap his mind around it. "I want you out of this house by tomorrow morning," Nicholas said, his voice steady despite the pain. "And you can tell Mark the partnership is over. I'm filing a lawsuit for embezzlement, and you two will repay every penny you stole. If you're lucky, I won't press criminal charges." Jennifer tried to speak, but Nicholas was already heading up the stairs. "I don't want to hear another word. No more excuses, justifications, or tears. I want you out of my life." In the days that followed, Nicholas plunged into a haze of lawyers, paperwork, and audits. The full extent of the betrayal became even clearer. Jennifer and Mark had been siphoning money from the company for nearly 2 years, small amounts here and there that added up to a fortune. They'd used the apartment not just for romantic trysts, but as a true second home, buying expensive furniture, taking luxurious trips, all funded by Nicholas's work. The audit revealed that Mark had also diverted lucrative contracts to shell companies, pocketing commissions that should have gone to the partnership. Nicholas filed for divorce immediately, citing adultery and embezzlement. He also sued Mark, dissolving the partnership and demanding compensation for damages. Jennifer's lawyers tried to negotiate, claiming she'd been emotionally vulnerable and manipulated by Mark, but Nicholas wouldn't budge. The evidence was overwhelming. The apartment, the statements, the photos, everything built an irrefutable case. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. Jennifer tried to claim half the assets, but Nicholas's lawyer presented all the proof of fund diversion and adultery. The judge was merciless. Jennifer walked away with far less than she'd hoped, essentially just what she'd brought into the marriage, and was ordered to repay the stolen funds. The house, most of their savings, and shared assets all remained with Nicholas. As for Mark, he was ousted from the partnership with no compensation, and a court order forced him to repay the misappropriated funds under threat of criminal prosecution. The news spread quickly through professional circles. Mark's reputation was ruined. Companies cut ties, contracts were cancelled, and he had to shut down the office he'd tried to open on his own. Jennifer lost several clients when the story leaked and had to move to another state to try to rebuild her career. The apartment was put up for sale, and Nicholas made sure all proceeds went toward covering the damages. 9 months later, Nicholas was in his office reviewing plans for a new project when he received a text from an unknown number. It was Mark. "I need to talk to you. Please." Nicholas deleted the message without replying. There was nothing Mark could say that would make a difference now. That same afternoon, as he was leaving for lunch, Nicholas spotted Jennifer across the street. She looked thinner, her face weary, walking quickly while talking on the phone. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Nicholas saw something in her that might have been regret, or maybe just shame. He looked away and kept walking, never glancing back. That night, Nicholas was on the patio of his new apartment, a smaller place, but one that was entirely his, with no tainted memories. He looked out at the city lights below and thought about how drastically his life had changed since that phone call on that Saturday. The pain was still there, but it was different now, less sharp, more like a scar that aches when it rains. He'd lost a wife and a best friend, but he'd also gained something, clarity. He now knew that trust isn't something you give blindly, and that some people are capable of a cruelty you never imagined. Nicholas picked up his phone and looked at the photos he'd taken in that apartment months ago. He kept them not out of self-punishment, but as a reminder that he'd been strong enough to face the truth, to reject easy excuses, and to rebuild his life on his own terms. Then he deleted the photos, one by one, until nothing remained. He didn't need them anymore. That chapter was closed, and he was ready to write a new one. Months turned into a year. Nicholas expanded the company, now under his sole leadership. He hired new engineers, closed major contracts, and discovered that working alone was less lonely than working alongside someone who'd betrayed him. He started going out again, not looking for anything serious, just rediscovering what it felt like to live without the weight of lies. People asked about the divorce, and he answered briefly, it didn't work out. He felt no need to elaborate. The story was his, and he kept it not as an open wound, but as a finished chapter. One ordinary afternoon, Nicholas was at a cafe reviewing contracts when a woman approached his table. "Sorry to bother you, but are you Nicholas?" He looked up and saw a woman with dark hair and a gentle smile. "I'm Sarah. I work at the construction firm bidding on the new hospital project. Your name's been coming up a lot. I just wanted to say I admire your work." They chatted briefly about the project, and when Sarah left, she left a business card on the table. "If you'd like to discuss ideas, give me a call." Nicholas smiled, not because of the subtle flirtation, but because his life was full of possibilities again. He slipped the card into his pocket and returned to his contracts. Maybe he'd call, maybe he wouldn't. What mattered was that the choice was his. His life was his again. And that, Nicholas thought as he signed the last document, was the best revenge possible, simply moving forward and thriving. Jennifer and Mark had tried to destroy what he'd built, but in the end, they'd only destroyed themselves. Nicholas stood firm, stronger, wiser, and free. That Saturday phone call had changed everything, but not in the way Jennifer and Mark expected. It had freed Nicholas from a lie and given him the chance to rebuild on solid, honest ground. And in the end, that was worth more than any secret apartment or false happiness. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.